Good morning. This is Senate Transportation Committee. It's Friday, February 1st. We are moving from alternative transportation discussion that we had this morning and budget discussions to the miscellaneous D&D bill. And we have our counselor with us to go through the bill. By Senate rule, we need to vote it out today. So the discussion is, do we want to vote it out and bring it back in, or just vote it out as a bill moving forward? But we will go through the documents first. Yes.
What happens if we don't vote it out?
If we don't vote it out, then we're missing the rule deadline of a bill to get out a committee bill to get introduced. And so we would just have, if we wanted to do that, we'd have to ask the Rules Committee for permission.
You already missed it. This is your extended deadline.
We're extended that. So we miss our extended deadline. The extended deadline is today or Tuesday. But like, I don't know if you noticed the other day on the bill, committee across the street introduced like 4 bills and then immediately we'll pull them back.
Yeah.
Same with Senate Education had a few.
So
I remember finance did this, and maybe finance is a different animal, but I mean, if we did miss this deadline, couldn't we just take any bill, like the smuggler's notch bill, and just put everything we want in there?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so.
there's pluses and minuses of doing that, but yeah, you could do that. That is something that people do.
Okay. So your bill, you have paper copies of it. There should be 2 documents. One is the bill. It'll say draft 5.1 at the top of it, and it's 24 pages. And then the second one will say Senator Perchlik proposals, just because I've been corresponding with him, and that will be 10 pages. You have posted to your committee website draft 5.2 of the 24-page document. The only difference between 5.1 and 5.2 is on page 6, and Megan and I printed out that side sheet so you would have it there. I will walk through, I'll give just a brief, this is what this section does. We did the overview before, and I will highlight the changes that have been made since the last time that you saw the bill, being conscious of the fact that you do not have much time before you're on the floor. So section 1 deals with the definition of transporters. This was changing the definition of transporters to account for the businesses or people that are selling a small number of vehicles. They do not meet the definition of dealer, which is a quantity based in a year of sales. So this would be modifying the definition of transporter so that those individuals would be able to get transporter plates for purposes of moving those vehicles.
That's the only change on that.
That's on page 4.
That's
Yep.
unfortunate. Yeah. So we're all good with that.
Yeah, we closed that out.
Yeah.
Okay, and then that's also related to section 2. Section 3, definition of all surface vehicles. In the version that you saw when we walked through the language before, it said 4 to 8, and it used to say 6 or 8 tires. The version that the Department of Motor Vehicles proposed said 4 to 8, and this now says up to 8 to account for the possibility of like an all surface.
Yeah, I think we agree with that.
Yep.
Okay. Section 4, this is where you're going to need to look at that side document. This deals with the record keeping requirements for certificates of title. If you'll remember when we were in here before, what this section and a number of the sections.
For anything?
For anything that they issue a certificate of title for.
Now, isn't there a better word than anything?
If you can come up with it, I'm happy to include it. Anything was the best word that I could come up with. I mean, you could say all vehicles, but that doesn't account for things that might not meet the definition of vehicle that they would issue a certificate of title
It's
for.
just anything is kind of interesting to get it.
I mean, this is shifting away from when you listed out all of the things to leave open the fact that there's something like the all-surface vehicle.
Just put any there. That's all. Just put for the tracing of any Department of Motor Vehicle issues. Or could you use any? Yeah.
I don't know if the person who knows more about what they title has a substitute word for anything.
You can check that with them probably.
I do not, because you're exactly right. If you say vehicle, then you leave some out, right? So
And why the maintained format isn't green, because that was a new
Oh, it
change.
used to say, shall be maintained in an electronic format. They're currently maintaining it in an electronic format. They want to keep the subsection heading still saying electronic format, but for the potential for flexibility in the future, if they maintain it in a format that's not electronic. It also used to say that they needed to maintain it indefinitely. That is longer than they would need to maintain it, as it's been explained to me, because they need to maintain the record for however long the vehicle exists. And that's a federal requirement, right? Or just a
How long do
practical.
they know
I
the
think it's
vehicle
a-
exists?
Well,
If it's in storage and not,
correct, I mean, people have what, 1943s, which we could now title, so what if you have that in 200 years and my kids' have it, right? So the title would still be valid, so it seems we would wanna have the record of that title
oh,
basically forever,
Forever.
forever that the vehicle's alive.
But if you say indefinite, then they need to maintain it past the point that the vehicle is alive.
oh,
If they happen to know the vehicle.
yeah, right, if they happen to know.
Right, okay, and then, okay, I want to ask what other formats they might do, magnetic.
Do you have any idea what the replacement to electronic format might be?
Do not, I mean, we were using roll film when I came at Microfiche.
Maybe go back to paper.
We might.
Okay,
Okay, so that is adding a new section to 23 VSA section, as 23 VSA section 117, and then the balance of the title sections will reference back to that. So it says you need to maintain title pursuant to section 117 in all of the places where certificate of title record keeping requirements were referenced.
Okay.
So those all go together, and that's gonna take you to section 10. I'm on page 8. Nothing has changed here beyond what we talked about when you walked through the bill last. This was just the error in moving something over from the definition section of 23 VSA section 4 to allow for the permissive, the may annually register, allowing temporary residents to register in Vermont. It also should be foreign partnerships, firms, associations, and corporations having a place of business in the state of Vermont. And that comes from the definition of resident in 23 VSA section 4, which wouldn't be applicable here, but it's preserving the approach to allowing the registration for those vehicles of businesses that are currently allowed. And then just to remind you, your definitions of resident and temporary resident, these are on the bottom of page 9. This is saying you're required, if you're here for permanently or for an indefinite number of years, you may if you're a temporary resident, and there's a definition for that. And these two definitions would only apply for this section.
Well, they did influence our veterans language. Okay,
Okay, and then section 11, no changes here. This is saying that the commissioner shall register if it's required or permitted to be registered, provided that the form is filled out and the information is sufficient. And they pay. Section 12, this is allowing the low numbered plates to be at a weight up to 26,001 pounds. This is consistent with the conservation plate and the Bright Futures plate. And the example that I will continue to give is the Tundra is higher than the pleasure car rate would allow. So you could not at present have a 101 to 9,999 plate on a Tundra.
on a full, because it's over 26,000.
It's over the pleasure car rate amount and well under 26,000 pounds.
the 26,000 is pretty high,
Yeah.
that's what's my
Is that like
my
a-
earlier comment, that brings
Dump
in,
truck.
huh? Yeah, like a dump truck, or a steak truck, I wonder.
Do you know what kind of, what
Exactly.
vehicle we're talking about, gets
Well,
up to
so-
26,000 pounds?
A state vehicle wouldn't be registered as a pleasure car, it'd be registered as municipal or state, so they wouldn't fall into that. And I don't know, I mean, if you worked on a farm or owned a farm, and you had like 350, right? It's probably registered in your 10 to 18,000 pound range or
So
whatever.
what-
I don't know how you get to 26, right?
Well, 26
Yeah, well, why are we using 26?
Well, because you gotta remember, and I think I'm correct on this, is that when
When
you're hauling a camper, it's not only the size of your truck, but it's the weight of the camper as well.
Camper has eating and sleeping facilities, you're actually exempted from raising your weight for that. But if you towed a flatbed trailer with a tractor on it,
Yeah,
you've got to raise your weight. And the 26,000 pounds just goes along with, as Anthea said, the other statutes, that's the language.
And I just want to be really clear, it's not changing anything about the fees to register or that you can register. It's just saying this license plate can go on that properly registered vehicle.
Alright,
So it's a very narrow change.
Right.
but the way it does seem,
So do we care about
we don't
heavy
care.
trucks having certain low numbered plates? I want to see a dump truck.
I don't care about plates, you know that.
Yeah, likewise.
I would say that's a policy decision.
I still think cancel should have 2 Ls, but I will, that's right up there with the quotation.
Yeah, we had a big debate about quotations and periods.
Okay, section 13, this deals with the prorated return of registration fees, and statute currently only comments getting a prorated refund for the 1-year registration that's not used and the 2-year registration, and it's split based on whether or not it's a return of 1 year or 2 years. There are a small number of things that can be registered for 5 years. This has a complicated formula to calculate what the prorated return of the registration fees would be.
Good example of why people need to learn fractions.
Yes, there you go.
Tell my 11-year-old.
Yeah, if they say, oh, we don't need to learn this, show them this part of the statute.
Let them cook a cake.
Okay.
Okay, so you're good with section 13?
14, yeah.
Okay, section 14, you're seeing
This is
changes
new.
here. This
Was
is,
this in the original at all?
so in the original, what the DMV is proposing for your consideration is to say nothing about what lights go on what vehicles is changing, but they're out of the permitting game for lights on government-owned law enforcement vehicles. So still are gonna need to have the permitting process for emergency services vehicles. That's gonna deal with like volunteer firefighters, still gonna need
Or ambulance?
or an ambulance, still gonna need the permitting process for constables that get lights. But for a like City of Montpelier police cruiser, they will not be issuing a permit for it.
Which, yeah, I'm surprised we didn't change this earlier. Like all these years, you've been issuing permits to police departments. And it wasn't.
And what's really interesting is the prior chief of Montpelier, Tony,
Right, yeah,
it was his idea.
to get rid of it.
Yeah, so
Before
we're
he
picking that
retired.
up from, right, from before he left, so.
Yeah, because, yeah, you probably have never denied a permit from a police department.
And I'm not sure who pulls them over and checks if they're there.
Well, that's a good point.
And they would be very great people.
I've actually seen a state trooper pull over a fish and game truck, game warden, for speeding.
Good.
Kind of interesting.
Okay,
Okay,
All right,
and then
so-
all of the highlighting, these are changes that have been made based on the discussions that you had over the last 2 weeks about trying to have there not be blue lights on anything, being more explicit there is a prohibition. So I'll walk through it. It's now section 1251, the section heading is sirens and emergency warning lamps, and there's a definition for emergency warning lamps that we'll get to. Adding some subsection headings to make it clear what the subsection is about, and then it allows you to use things like, this is the subsection on prohibition. So prohibition, a motor vehicle shall not be operated on a highway of the state equipped with any of the following: a siren, unless it has a permit, or authorizing the siren, or a permit is not required under 1252. That's where you're gonna see the change about not requiring the permits for law enforcement vehicles. So you can't have a siren unless you're government-owned law enforcement or you have a permit. You can't have an emergency warning lamp unless you either have a permit or you don't need to have a permit because you're a law enforcement vehicle. And you can't have a blue light of any kind unless you have either the permit or you do not need to have a permit under section 1252. No changes with permit transfer except switching from using the colored signal lamps phrasing to instead use emergency warning lamps. No change to the exception to the subsection on the exception for vehicles from another state, except for changing the nomenclature. And then 1252, this is where you've got the change from the department with not requiring the permits. I've included coloring because there's just some language changes, but nothing substantively is changing here. Where you're gonna get your change that's substantive from the last time you looked at this is the addition of that new definition. This is gonna be on page 17, a new definition that's applicable for sections 1251 to 1255 of the subchapter. Emergency warning lamp means a lamp or lamps that provide a flashing light to identify an authorized vehicle on an emergency mission that may be a rotating beacon or pairs of alternately or simultaneously flashing lamps. Where did I get that language? That came from the periodic inspection manual. I did not come up with this.
Okay.
And it does not include a lamp or lamps that provide an exclusively amber flashing light. So your emergency warning lamp is going to be the definition from the periodic inspection manual, but it doesn't include something that only shows amber light. So the ones that would be permitted or allowed on law enforcement vehicles would be the red ones, the blue ones, or the combination of red and blue, or red and amber, or blue and amber. Those would either be permitted or you need to be a law enforcement vehicle.
What about the blue light on the fire truck? Where does that,
That would be permitted, and that would be a flashing one.
they have to get a permit?
On the fire trucks, yes.
So are people applying for those permits?
Do they flash? Do the blue lights flash on the fire
They could.
trucks? They could, but they don't have to, do they?
Well, like, I think it depends on which light they use for the blue light. But they could be a flashing light or it could be a steady light.
Right, I thought,
I think you heard testimony that it is easier to see if it's flashing.
Right, I think that was their intent is for.
And we said, oh, well, you should only have it on when you're parked, but then they had to they
Yeah.
couldn't just
Oh.
have that.
But you settled on the fact that it needs to only be visible from the rear of the vehicle.
So right now, you can see a fire truck with a blue light, they should have a permit from the commissioner.
And that won't change.
Right. But I wonder if anybody that has actually gotten.
I'm for the red light, you check the other box too. And
Oh, they have to get the permit for the
Right,
red.
that's it, I don't know for sure, but that would make sense.
So is that a similar thing where with the permit for the police officers, could you imagine a situation where a fire department asks for a permit for red lights on their fire truck and you say no? So why would we require you to do a permit for that?
That is a very good question. I don't have an answer for it. It does.
It could be that you would want to say if it is a government-owned
Yeah.
vehicle, it doesn't need a permit, but because for purposes of like volunteer firefighters,
Yeah,
they
yes.
can get the signal lamps, so.
No, they would definitely need, and I know even if it's like a fire district or something, but that's a municipality officially, so.
Yeah, so that is not what you have on the page, but it could be written to say, government-owned law enforcement, don't need permit. Government-owned emergency services vehicle, don't need permit. Constable and non-government-owned emergency services vehicles do need a permit. We could change it to be that.
How about the volunteer firefighters themselves on their vehicle? Do they have to get a permit or not?
yes.
They would need to get a permit,
Yes.
even for an amber light, right?
No one needs a permit for amber light.
Nobody,
Amber is.
amber flashing.
Anyone can have an amber light. Amber lights are required to be on certain vehicles like snowplows.
Right.
And this would not allow a green light on a snowplow or a purple light on a funeral processional vehicle.
A volunteer firefighter can have a red light, right?
Yes,
If they get a permit,
if they get a permit.
okay. So, seems to be a good change to help with the workload at the DMV, if to have to issue permits to fire trucks seems
To
kind of silly.
to government.
To a government, yeah,
I mean, you would never deny it, I would imagine.
in
Now,
fact,
there are some private ambulance services.
they would need a
How would-
permit.
Correct.
They would need a permit.
Yes, because if going with the definition of government owned, they wouldn't.
They wouldn't meet that definition.
If you want to vote this out today and you want that language in there, I don't know if that's gonna be possible.
No, we will vote it out and then bring it back, make some other little changes.
Yeah, because we still have those inspection things that
Yeah,
we're
we
more.
won't have enough time to probably get to that decision, so, but so maybe just make a note.
Do you want that for,
I
like
do,
an
but if the
amendment?
committee feels that that's okay, Russ, are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, Maz, are you okay with that?
Thank you. Yep.
Okay,
So we'll just add government.
Government-owned emergency services.
emergency services, okay. See, we're lowering your, next time we give you some more work, you have to remember that we're taking some away.
Does this remove some pages from the bill?
No, it'll add pages to the bill.
That's not always
Okay. That is going to take you to section 19. This is exempt vehicle title, and this is cleanup from the fact that you got rid of exempt vehicle titles in the miscellaneous motor vehicle bill last year, and we just missed a few. So going forward, exempt vehicle title shouldn't appear anywhere in statute, so that's sections 19 and 20. 21 is different. So if you think back to the work that you did in the miscellaneous motor vehicle bill, where you had years ago, you could get an exempt vehicle title if the vehicle was older than 25 years old, and you didn't need to get a certificate of title if it was more than 15 years old. There was that gap between 15 and 25. You closed the gap. You said exempt vehicle title was available if it's 15 years or older, but you didn't need to get a certificate of title if it was 15 years or older. Now, the DMV is in a position where they can issue certificates of title to vehicles that are older than 15 years. What you did in anticipation of that was basically draw a line in the sand and say that a vehicle that is not more than 15 years old on January 1, 2024 does not need a certificate of title. But what the DMV intended you to do was to say, we're drawing that line in the sand. You don't need the certificate of title if it's more than 15 years old on January 1 of 2024, except if there's that change in ownership that happens after January 1 of 2024, you're coming to the DMV, then it's going to need a certificate of title. So your vehicle that's older than 15 years old, that's in your garage, don't need a certificate of title. Older than 15 years old on January 1, 2024. If you sell it and there's a change in ownership, that would be the triggering event that would then need it to
And you
be.
could get that with the registration or an attestation.
That's
Correct, so, and this has been rather confusing for many people. So in the example that Anthea just gave, the output of me purchasing Senator Kitchell's vehicle and coming to register it would be, I get a title. Not that I have to have a title to come in, and that seems to be where the confusion is, especially when we say we're gonna title everything. Well, output is, so you will still have situations where the
You need
registration
a
works.
bill of sale then.
A bill of sale showing the exchange of ownership, and we've created a non-titled vehicle affidavit for the customer to certify.
And you could also, if the seller had a registration, they could give that and they can use that.
Absolutely.
And from a language perspective, it says, and has not had a change in ownership since. So until there is the change in ownership, it has not had a change in ownership. So it's not in anticipation of a change in ownership. I think that's a really good
Yeah,
example to bring up for.
yeah, my constituents that have like a boat trailer in their garage, they don't need to go get a title for it. Because they're just.
And they don't need to go get a title for it if they're thinking about selling it.
Right. Okay.
Okay, section 22 is again just one of those cleanups. Same with section 23, getting rid of the references to exempt vehicle title
Now we're down to fire extinguishers.
on boats.
On boats.
All of the changes for the language dealing with vessels came from the US Coast Guard audit, and it's to have Vermont statute more closely aligned with United States Code and the Code of Federal Regulations.
Close that out. Oh, and here's masking.
Russ is gonna do the fire extinguisher.
That sounds good.
He's our vessel guy.
Yes.
Okay. Same with the Vermont numbering provisions. This is to align with federal law. The when you need to get it numbered in the state that it's in, the grace period is 60 days. Vermont statute is wrong. It says 90 days. It doesn't align with federal law. And then you've got section 26. This is for the commercial driver's license piece, the prohibition on masking or prohibition on diversion, expungement, anything that's like hiding the fact that there was that conviction. This is when I sort of threw the Code of Federal Regulations under the bus a couple weeks ago, saying there's no definition for masking. I can't tell you what it is. I know that there are like examples that the DMV can point to in terms of like guidance documents there. So I don't have a definition that I can absorb from the Code of Federal Regulations, but he can certainly tell you what masking means. You also could put a definition in. The problem is then if there's like a change on a federal level, you're not going to be aligned with it. And this is all intended to align with federal requirements of the DMV.
So for that, whoever reports it, just having some examples of what masking
I can,
situations would help probably
I can provide that.
answer the questions.
Okay, and then your effective dates, everything takes effect on July 1, 2024, except for the section 21 on the drawing the line in the sand. But the change in ownership piece for the certificate of title, that would take effect retroactively on January 1 of 2024. And I think that that would be aligning with what DMV has been doing with respect to issuing the certificate of title when there is the change in ownership.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Any questions on this section of the bill? I think what we might do is just vote this out and then next week decide what we're gonna add to it.
Okay.
So I think we're all good with this. It's all pretty easy.
Yeah, so there's gonna be some, I think there's gonna be a more explanation on some very, very simple things, but
Yeah.
So-
there's no,
Were you thinking we'd agree whether, come up, whether we wanted to offer amendments before third reading? Is that what you're thinking? Or are you asking to have it committed to the committee, recommitted to the
Have it
committee?
recommitted. So we'll vote it out.
Yeah, do like Ed did.
So it had to go on notice and then it gets introduced, or do we do that when it gets on the notice calendar? Or do we have to wait until it gets on the action calendar?
I think you could,
It seems
Ed,
like,
you need a motion and Bloomberg can give it to you.
I wondered if.
Pending entry on the notice calendar. Have it-
Just do it the same day, yeah.
Sure to do it after the pro tem votes to adjourn.
Yeah, that's makes it more interesting. Yeah, we should just keep doing that.
yeah,
He can give you the motion to make.
Yeah. Bills.
Do
Okay,
you want to take a little bit of time to talk about your other side language proposals? Or do you want to save that for next week?
Oh, you mean?
Mufflers, stamps on motorcycle mufflers, tinted windows, car seat language that I think you've already fully resolved.
I think we were.
the only thing that, I don't think we have time to go through them, but the thing that is not on here is the fraudulent airbags.
Yeah, what do you want to do about that?
And we talked to Senator Sears, he was happy to take it in, he said he wouldn't hold the bill or change our report. So if we added it on here, they would take it up and then, make a change or
Well,
not.
we could do that after we get it recommitted.
Yeah, that would be, so I was just saying on the list that Anthea said that for our discussions, there would be 5. They
Oh.
talked about the car
Wrap up.
seats, the rotors, the tinted windows and the motorcycle.
Um,
And I would say that, well, I don't think we have controversy around the airbags. So that and the car seats, I don't expect a big debate about. What we actually do on the rotors is a question, and same with tinted windows. And I think we would, like, for the motorcycle, we need to take more testimony. We can decide if we have time to do that on this bill or later. I would want to have the motorcycle.
So from a logistics perspective, I can have the bill that you vote out today include the car seat language and include the airbag language. It's already been edited. I would just have to run up to my office, add it in, and you could vote that out. And then you would be leaving for your amendment once it's recommitted, the government-owned emergency services vehicles, and then all of your language around what might or might not be changing the inspection manual piece. Alternatively, you can just vote out this, I don't have to go anywhere, and then you can deal with everything next week. It's up to you. I just don't know if you want to have more in it now or.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, in the rules committee, they talked about, when you introduce it, people might read it and think, but I don't know if that's true. Like that there would be advantage to have more in there, so it's more transparent that what the bill is gonna be, but if anybody's paying attention, that would actually read the bill as introduced before we recommit it to ourselves. So I don't think it's gonna be confusing, so.
You also can do, for your committee report, a strike all amendment so that what is printed in the calendar is the entire bill and it's not a like have to flip between the two to see these different
Well,
sections.
it seems like it's easier not to make you go run to put it in there, so. We're all about making Anthea's life better.
Okay, so
Maybe if we do a show reconsider.
Yeah, maybe sure, yeah, that's it.
can I just highlight a couple things in the language that you have, just so you can think about it over the weekend, and then I will need you to start your weekend. The changes that you see that's highlighted in green in section 13A, that's on the muffler piece. That's just a technical correction. When I absorbed the language from New York, I had said operated or driven. You don't need that given the definition of operate in 23 VSA section 4. For the tinted window language, this is taking the approach of linking to the federal requirements. So you can have the aftermarket tint up to that 70% transmissible level, and that would be applicable for the windows that, like the front windshield, the rear windshield, and the front side windows. Could have full tinting, which is currently allowed on your rear windows. This is a deviation from the bill that was introduced on tinting, which would just like prohibit it.
You're gonna ask about the St. Bernard exemption?
No, but on the previous point, if Anthea is ready to add the car seat and the airbags, I do see one possible utility of throwing it in today, because then those two both, the car seat one is now in a bill over in health and welfare, and the other one judiciary. So I mean, having it out there as the introduced bill might keep the trains moving on those fronts. So
Wouldn't take long to do it.
I would support
I can-
to
yeah.
add those to it.
Then I will stop talking.
Let's have the clerk.
Thank you.
The clerk needs to
Okay,
clerk.
so it will be version 6.1, and I will be back with it.
What one?
Yeah.
Bill number, just,
It won't have a bill number yet, but it has a draft request number.
I wrote it in.
Megan got
It's
it.
filled out.
She's got it filled out. huh?
on this one?
It says
Oh, there we go.
something, something.
Thank you, 24-01, okay. And there's a 6.1, draft number 6.1.
Did have
Yeah.
the hand.
Okay.
I was just gonna say that the definition of tinting, number 7 is the most convoluted language I've ever seen in my life.
But we haven't agreed to
Or
it
is there
yet.
any way we could make it simpler?
I hope so.
Yeah, you've got the weekend to think about it.
Yeah, come back with us with a,
So we can,
Yeah, we ready?
yeah, or did somebody move it?
I'll
We have to
move,
move a committee now?
yes, you do. I'll move, the miscellaneous DMV bill, draft numbers, was 6.1.
Okay, with that movement, we will.
Second, and I go
I
whether
don't
we
need
need
a
it or
second,
not.
I don't think we need.
Okay, sounds good. Senator Chittenden,
Aye.
Senator Kitchell,
Yes.
and I'm an aye. Senator Perchler,
Aye.
Senator Mazza,
Yes,
5-0-0. And, do we need to, at this point in time, we probably need to put
I think we need to put my name down as a
Okay.
reporter, and then I'm just gonna get it recommitted, and then we should be able to finish and get
This rule seems kind of silly, because when all the committees are introducing and pulling it back just to work around this,
Yeah, I don't understand why the rule's there.
this deadline seems premature or early.
Yeah, not sure if it was just something that they always do, or if they just, like, it's just like automatic every year.
I get the intent, but it just makes sense.
Yeah, it's so easy to get around.
We just have to wait for we have to wait for the bill to come back, right?
I guess we should,
Yeah, he's gonna,
we'll put this on it.
All right, we go.
and then
Sorry,
Andy
I
will
was
take
trying to
them.
butcher your name, I was trying to put more letters in your name than I do, so I have to look it up.
You took it.
That's what that is.
Yeah, sorry.
That's fine.
I think it's very disrespectful to spell somebody's name wrong, so.
I have mine misspelled a lot.
I met somebody that didn't need Catholic,
Official has 2 L's, does it not?
No, it does not.
so they do add it, sometimes even up on the things I've seen, I with 2 L.
Really?
Yeah,
It's like Andy's name, I always try to put an extra syllable in there, I don't know. if it-
yeah, people like to put a CK.
Yeah. Actually,
If it was single, right? Purchasing,
Yeah.
you want to be
I always
consistent.
try to, I'm always trying to put it.
My dad added the E his parents immigrated from the Czech Republic, and so then there was 5 consonants in a row.
So it was PRCH
Yeah.
and the E didn't,
My dad added the E, thought it would help, but he says people still don't know.
it's like people whose French names have been anglicized, like,
Right, he like tried to purposely anglicize.
Well, Russ wants to be Jane's son, so, you know.
Well, who does it?
Yeah.
Jeez, no crowies.
I know, my baby's coming home tonight.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Are you talking about Senator Ed?
Oh, Senator Ash, oh, yes, we offline now, or?
We actually are.